What is up, boys? It is Ron from Fantasy Flow. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to be doing sits and starts. We got some tough matchups. We have low over-unders in Week 11, so this could be the difference, man, between you making the playoffs and missing the playoffs. I got a couple names that I want to share with you guys. 3 running backs who you should potentially sit because of the matchup or because of the over-under, and 3 running backs who you should smash start, right? If these are dudes that you're probably debating starting, you should feel pretty comfortable starting them. So without wasting any time, bro, let's hop into this video. And the first name is going to be DeAndre Swift, or it's going to be the Bears and Packers game. He's the first sit on this. And this one's kind of rough, bro, because I've been a DeAndre Swift truther this season. In the offseason, I was really high on him. I mean, he's one of my guys. And it's just a very low over-under. So we have a 40.5 over-under. It's one of the lowest on the slate. There's actually no over-under over 50 points for context. But this one is, the lower end of it. So we do have the Bears at home versus the Packers. And here's the situation. So Shane Waldron was fired, right? So many people are expecting, okay, maybe this Bears offense can turn it around. I think we need to see it before we can believe it, right? So my expectation is that things will remain the same in terms of the offensive line being dog shit, right? The offensive line's not suddenly going to get better, right? So they're projected to only score 17 points, as I mentioned, 40.5 over under, and they are a 5.5 point underdog. So bad game script for DeAndre Swift. Here's the thing, right? We expect DeAndre Swift to be somebody who gets a lot of receptions. That's what we thought coming into the season. Unfortunately, it has not materialized that way. It's been very, hit or miss in terms of his receptions. Like in the last 3 games, he only had one game where he had over 6 receptions, and then the other games he had, 1 reception or fewer. So that's not what you want to see, man. Like, unfortunately, DeAndre Swift's one of those players where game script matters very much, even more than a guy like Derrick Henry. Basically, he doesn't really play third downs, and he's taken off the field in like high value situations. When I say that, I mean like hurry up offense, 4 minute, 2 minute offense, goal line, dude. He gets taken out for Roshan Johnson. So those are the times when, like, I don't know, man. Maybe you're like me. You're like sitting there watching a matchup, and then you see it's like a 2 minute hurry offense, and the dude you're fucking playing against suddenly gets like 6 fantasy points in one drive because he gets like 2 or 3 catches for like 15 yards each reception. It's absolutely tilting. And then when you have players that don't get that stuff, it just feels so bad. It's like, well, like, looks like DeAndre Swift's not going to get any more points in this game. You know what I mean? So that's what's unfortunate, bro. Like, and the Bears' offensive line, as I mentioned, is not going to suddenly get better under Shane Wald or without Shane Waldron. Like, the Bears' offensive line, bro, like, they must be breakdancers, man. The amount of times that I see them just straight up laying down on the field, like after a snap, is ridiculous, dude. They get absolutely body bagged by the defensive line. Like, they're just laying there, dude. Like they're about to, pop open a magazine and start reading. It's crazy. So here's how I could be wrong, right? So the way I want to structure this video is like dudes that I want to sit, and then why I might be wrong, why they might actually not be sits. So for Swift, it's really the receiving work. If he can get receiving work, if they can manufacture screens and stuff for him, then he should be okay, even in low over under. At the end of the day, he's been kind of like their best player. So I do think they have to like build the offense around him. So we'll see what happens. And as I mentioned, the new offensive coordinator, that could be, greener pastures ahead. We just don't know. I like to assume, I like to hope so, considering the fact that I have Swift, and then I'm a huge fan of Swift. So that does it for Swift. Those are my pros and cons, I suppose. And then the next matchup is going to be Titans at Vikings, and the players that I think you guys should be sitting is pretty much all Titans running backs. You can probably start Ridley, but I would say the running backs you definitely want to stay away from. Yet again, we have a low over under 39.5 points, and the Titans are 6 point underdogs. So this is going to be a game where I think the Vikings just dominate them. The Vikings defense is very vicious. It's a very strong defense. And Pollard and Spears are sharing the backfield to boot, right? So that's why I wouldn't feel comfortable starting any of them. Pollard was kind of banged up last week. It looks like he should probably play, but there's still a chance he doesn't. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Essentially, here are my thoughts. If Pollard doesn't play, you can start Spears. Like, you can start him as like, a running back, 24 plus. Like, I don't think he's going to be in like the top 24, but he still can potentially be serviceable. But if both of them play, I would sit both of them, to be honest. I just think in a game like this where it's making up for one of those games where like the Titans could score like 11 points, or 10 points. So that's not really a running back that we do want to start. Um, Basically, I think the Vikings' time possession is going to be insane. Like, they're just going to have the ball the whole time. You're just going to feel bad, having any players in this game. And the ways that I could be wrong here is that Darnold has kind of been a fart, and he's liable to remaining a fart. Like, we knew that Darnold was kind of a flash in the pan, that he might revert back to his old ways, and it looks like it's kind of happening. So that's how I could be wrong. Like, if he struggles to move the ball and he just looks like his typical, fart-like form, then it could be a situation where the Titans could potentially even like upset them and win. So that's the one way. The second way is like Calvin Ridley pops off, or Nick Westbrook Akine. They pop off. They go down at the 1, and then Pollard or Spears can like fall into the end zone, right? So, but even in that situation, Will Levis is liable to rushing those balls, to getting rushing touchdowns. Yeah, man. So that's the second sit. Third sit is going to be the Cowboys versus Texans. It's going to be Rico Dowdle, our sweet, sweet Rico Dowdle. Dude, I've been touting. The guy I've been saying that you should try to go pick up and trade for. Unfortunately, the dream is over, dude. We are Jover. We're Joe Biden in the grave right now. Dak is out for the season, man. So all the good things that I used to say about Rico Dowdle, you can just pretty much crumple those and throw them into the bin. It's basically you just can't start him, man. It's a low over under. Again, not that low, but 42 point over under. Texans are 7.5 point favorites. So there's a chance that the fucking Cowboys get absolutely blown out again in this game. Like, Cooper Rush was dog shit. They're going to be starting him again. I don't know why they don't just turn to Trey Lance, but we're going to see Cooper Rush one more time. And, they're massive underdogs, and their offense looked decrepit last week. It's really just CeeDee Lamb and Dowdle and then nobody else. But this is a game where I don't want to touch anyone, dude. Even if you could sit Lamb, I would even consider that. Plus, there's also the chance that Ezekiel Elliott, also known as Randall from Recess, he might have snitched again, bro, and might, have went and cried to the coach to get more touches again, and they might just shove 10 touches into our faces and force us to sit there and watch Zeke basically run the ball, which are essentially just, it's as if you just throw the ball into the dirt when Zeke gets the ball. Like, it could be like 2nd and 6, he'll get you 3 yards. It can be 2nd and 5, he'll get you 3 yards. It can be 2nd and 1, he'll get you 3 yards. Like, that's what Zeke's good for, just getting you a yard and falling forward for 2. So, unfortunately, that's the issue here. Here are the ways that I could be wrong here in this matchup. Cooper Rush might be a shapeshifter, and he actually is Pat Mahomes. Like, Pat Mahomes can shapeshift into Cooper Rush, and he can end up starting for the Cowboys. That's the only way I can imagine this offense being serviceable. The second way that this game can go the way that I don't expect it to is that maybe Ezekiel Elliott gets kidnapped on the way to the stadium, and he doesn't get any touches, and it's just Rico Dowdle getting the ball. And if he can get like workhorse type role, he might fall into like 12 fantasy points. So those are the two ways, basically shape-shifting and a heist / kidnapping. I wouldn't put my money on any of those two things, but I mean, in all seriousness, the Cowboys could just be better, right? They could just like be a team that just makes things happen. Like, the Texans are, I wouldn't say the Texans are fraudulent, but they're liable to fraudulence. Like, Stroud hasn't really looked that good this season, but they are getting Nico back. So like, Nico back, Joe Mixon looking like an absolute stud, a low over under with them being favorites. It's got like the recipe for the Texans dominating, right? And like a Nico coming back game, Stroud proves to everyone he's not washed, but not overhyped, and he throws for like 3 touchdowns. Like, I can just see that happening, right? So I wouldn't put any money on the Cowboys turning it around. That does it for the dudes that I would sit. Now we're going to hop over to the players that I love. Let's try to speed this video up a little bit. Basically, it's J.K. Dobbins and Chase Brown in the Chargers versus Bengals game. We have a 48-point over-under, so a little bit higher. Again, not 50, but one of the nicer ones on the slate, to be honest. And the Chargers are 1.5-point favorites. So this is essentially a gimme. Two teams that are kind of locked in a playoff hunt or playoff race. They're both trying to make the wild card, essentially. The Bengals have a higher road to walk, higher mountain to climb, whatever, longer road, higher mountain. And yeah, the Chargers are kind of in it. They've actually looked really good. So here's the reason: it's a close game with a higher over, meaning I like both running games in this game. Both teams are very good, and this game is very important, right? So I can imagine like potentially conservative play calling, and neither team really not wanting to make mistakes. Both teams want to really establish the run and establish the run game, try to keep time of possession. This is one of those games that I can imagine being like not as high scoring as this over under entails, but dominated by the running game for both teams, which is kind of unfortunate if you're a Jamar Chase owner. I have Chase, and we can't be too greedy, right? He just had a huge game. This is one of those weeks where I can imagine it being the opposite, because the Chargers do have a pretty solid secondary, and their rushing defense has kind of been a little bit middle of the pack the past week. So that's why I love Chase Brown. And then from Cincinnati's point of view, their rushing defense hasn't really been that great all season. They've been a little bit better the last couple games, but still, that's why I love both guys. I just think the run game is going to be very vital. You can even like potentially start Gus Edwards at like a desperation flex play. So moving on now to the next matchup, it's Bears versus Packers. It's a 40.5 over under, so it's actually a low over under, but the Packers are 5.5 point favorites, as I mentioned. So it's from the same matchup that I already discussed with DeAndre Swift, except on the other side of the ball, we got Josh Jacobs. So I hated Swift, but I love Jacobs in this matchup for very similar reasons. Basically, the Bears are second to last, so they're 31st in the NFL in the last 3 games in rushing yards allowed. So the Bears have kind of leaned on their defense all season, and their defense has really been letting them down the past 3 weeks, especially when it comes to defending the run. So Josh Jacobs in a game where they're favored against the Bears, who have really been, skittering from the rushing defense point of view. This is one of those games where I can imagine Josh Jacobs just having a huge workload, 25 plus touches. And just this feels like one of those games, man. It's gonna be like a bite your ankles type game, run the ball down your throat. The Packers really trying to establish it's a divisional game. Now, here's where I could be wrong, right? These divisional games, they're always kind of strange, bro, where it's like a team that you wouldn't expect to be good, that seems like they should be getting blown out, suddenly like coming and like looking good and potentially even winning the game, dude. Like new offensive coordinator for the Bears, divisional game. They're still kind of in it for the playoff hunt or playoff position, wild card. So I can imagine this being one of those games that doesn't go that way, and the Bears actually looking decent. Caleb Williams having like I was about to say vintage game, but having like, a game where it's like kind of to silence the haters a little bit. I know a lot of people have been really shitting on Caleb Williams, calling him a bust. So this is one of those like prove it games, right? So I can imagine, Jordan Love hasn't been that good. He hasn't looked like his typical self these past couple weeks. So that's where I think it could go the other way. Last matchup, last player that I want to talk about, player that I really love this week is the Jets versus Colts. So this is a 43.5 over under, and the Jets are 4 point favorites actually. So that's kind of interesting there that the Jets are favorites. Like with how bad they've looked, the fact that they're still favorites proves to you that they can right the ship any given week. But here's why I love Jonathan Taylor in this matchup. So the Jets are 25th in the last 3 games in rushing yards allowed. So they're, the bottom third of the NFL. Robert Saleh basically got fired, and he took his defensive fire with him, dude. Any of the defensive prowess that the Jets had this season seems to have left the building with Robert Saleh. And the Jets are an atrocious team, dude. Their one defensive edge was in their secondary, but I don't know if that's even an edge at this point. I saw somebody tweet that Sauce Gardner, we can no longer call him Sauce. Like he needs to earn Sauce. He's now like Ahmed Gardner or whatever his name is, Ahmad Gardner. So yeah, Jonathan Taylor's going for 102 this game, bro. I think it's going to be one of those vintage Jonathan Taylor games. He's going to pop off. He's going to be dominating. The Colts might actually win this game, in my opinion. It's a decent over-under, right? The Colts are only 4 point underdogs. And I can see this flipping the other way, and the Colts actually not only, covering this spread, but potentially winning by, I would even say like a touchdown, dude. I just think the Jets are spiraling, and I can already see the fucking headlines of like the Jets season being over, Aaron Rodgers looking depressed, being pissed off, yelling at his teammates on the sideline, Anthony Richardson starting for the Colts, coming back and actually looking pretty good and running all over the Jets, dude. It's just one of those games where I can see Jonathan Taylor going for 102, Anthony Richardson going for, another 50 rushing yards and running another touchdown in. That's what I envision, man. I could be wrong. The ways that I could be wrong in this matchup, obviously, is that the Jets don't look like shit. They actually look pretty decent. They actually play very well. Their defense steps it up after getting called out all week or all month. And, Aaron Rodgers does enough. Devontae Adams stays involved. At the end of the day, the Colts don't really have a good defense, so it definitely could go that way. I'm kind of going against Vegas, right, by saying that. So, yeah, the Jets could easily look good and could continue being hot or cold, and they can hit on hot, basically. So those are my starts and sits, man, for week 11. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you liked this video. If you did, man, I'd really appreciate a like. While you're here, if you're new, hit me up with the subscribe. If you're new, if you want to catch more of my content moving forward, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.